Hi again. Walter Rauschenbusch, page 403 of Christianity and the Social Crisis. It is a mistake to regard the French Revolution as a movement of the poor. The poor fought in the uprising, but the movement got its strength, its purpose, and its direction from the third estate, the bourgeoisie, the business class of the cities, and they alone drew lasting profit from it. That class had been slowly rising to wealth, education, and power for several centuries, and the democratic movement of the 19th century has in the main been their march to complete ascendancy. During the same period, we can watch the slow development of a new class, which has been called the fourth estate, the city working class, the wage workers. They form a distinct class, all living without capital, merely by the sale of their labor, working and living under similar physical and social conditions everywhere, with the same economic interests and the same points of view. They present a fairly homogeneous body, and if any section of the people forms a class, they do. The massing of labor in the factories since the introduction of power machinery has brought them into close contact with one another. Hard experience has taught them how helpless they are when they stand alone. They have begun to realize their solidarity and the divergence of their interests from those of the employers. They have begun to organize and are slowly learning to act together, this being 1907, of course. The spread of education and cheap literature, the ease of communication, and the freedom of public meeting have rapidly created a common body of ideas and points of view among them. The modern labor movement is the upward movement of this class. It began with local and concrete issues that pressed upon a given body of working men, some demand for shorter hours or better wages, some grievance about fines or docking. The trades unions were formed as defensive organizations for collective action. It is quite true that they have often been foolish and tyrannical in their demands, and headstrong and even lawless in their actions. But if we consider the insecurity and narrowness of the economic existence of the working people, and the glaring contrast between the meager reward for their labor and the dazzling returns given to invested capital, it is impossible to deny that they have good cause for making a strenuous and continuous fight for better conditions of life. If Christian men are really interested in the salvation of human lives and in the health, the decency, the education, and the morality of the people, they must wish well to the working people in their effort to secure such conditions for themselves and their dear ones that they will not have to die of tuberculosis in their prime, nor feel their strength ground down by long hours of work, nor see their women and children drawn into the merciless hopper of factory labor, nor be shut out from the enjoyment of the culture about them which they have watered with their sweat. But the labor movement means more than better wages and shorter hours for individual working men. It involves the struggle for a different status for their entire class. Other classes have long ago won a recognized standing in law and custom and public opinion, so long ago that they have forgotten that they ever had to win it. For instance, the medical profession is recognized by law. Certain qualifications are fixed for admission to it. Certain privileges are granted to those inside. Irregular practitioners are hampered and suppressed. The clerical profession enjoys certain exemptions from taxation, from military service and jury duty. Ministers have the right to solemnize marriages and collect fees therefor. Railways give them half fares, and these privileges are granted to those whom the clergy themselves ordain and admit to their closed shop. A lawyer who is admitted to the bar thereby becomes a court officer. The Bar Association, which is his trades union, takes the initiative in disbarring men who violate the class code, and the courts take cognizance of its action. In the state of New York, the bar associations have assumed some right to nominate the judges. As for the business class, it is so completely enthroned in our social organization that it often assumes that it is itself the whole of society. On the other hand, the working class has no adequate standing as yet. It did have in the guilds of former times, but modern industry and modern law under the laissez-faire principle dissolve the old privileges and reduce the working class to a mass of unrelated human atoms. Common action on their part was treated in law as conspiracy. In our country, they have not yet won from their employers, nor from public opinion, the acknowledged right to be organized, to bargain collectively, to assist in controlling the discipline of the shops in which they have to work. The law seems to afford them very little backing as yet. It provides penalties for the kind of injuries which working men are likely to inflict on their employers, but not for the subtler injuries which employers are likely to inflict on their working men. Few will care to assert that in the bitter conflicts waged between labor and capital, the wrong has always been on one side. Yet when the law bears its sword, it is somehow always against one side. The militia does not seem to be ordered out against capital. The labor movement must go on until public opinion and the law have conceded a recognized position to the labor unions, and until the working men interested in a given question stand collectively on a footing of equality with the capitalists interested in it. This means a curtailment of power for the employers, and it would be contrary to human nature for them to like it. But for the working class, it would be suicidal to forego the attempt to get it. They have suffered fearfully by not having it. All the sacrifices they may bring in the chronic industrial warfare of the present will be cheap if they ultimately win through to an assured social and legal status for their class. We'll put in a link to a video we did on class warfare 3,000 years ago. King Ahab in the northern kingdom of Israel, in his battle for power with his neighbor, his next-door neighbor, Naboth, whose vineyard he covered it. This is a discussion by Walter Brueggemann. See you soon.